G'day guys, how's it going? My name is CJ, and it's that time of year again. iPhone announcement time. So get your wallets ready and throw your money at Apple. Well, before you do that, let's do a quick rundown of what was announced. Let's start off with the Apple Watch. There's a new Series 4 out in the wild now, and it looks good. It's a slightly tweaked design from the previous 3 models, but it's slightly thinner and has a bigger screen. Approximately 30% bigger than the previous version actually, and it looks really nice. The way it now conforms to the shape of the device with rounded corners makes it look so much more refined compared to the previous version where it was just a small rectangular box. It also has a redesigned crown that gives you a tactile feel and upgraded internals including sensors and processors to make it an even smoother experience. And now this is nice and everything, however, now what really interests me the most is its new health features, such as the auto heart rate detection feature where it can sense when people might be becoming tachycardic, which means getting an elevated heart rate, or bradycardic, where you can get an abnormally slow heart rate. Combine this auto sensing with the new ECG or EKG feature if you live in North America, and you have a widely distributed consumer device that could actually be life-saving. For those not familiar with medical terms, ECG stands for electrocardiogram, and it basically uses electrodes to detect the electrical signals controlling how your heart pumps blood around the body. In the Apple Watch, it combines an electrode placed on the underside of the watch, and then there's an electrode located in the digital crown, so when you place a finger on the crown, you'll be able to detect your signal. In the right situations, and in the Apple Watch's case, it can detect when someone is having what we call an arrhythmia, which basically means the electrical signal isn't normal and the heart isn't pumping normally and ultimately inefficiently. And as you know, we need blood to carry oxygen to our body to live, and if the pump isn't working, well, you're gonna have a bad time. So the Apple Watch could potentially be used to detect these funny heart rhythms in the right situations and in the right patient. It could potentially be used to pick up an abnormality before someone really becomes unwell. A really useful feature. It's really great to see such a huge company taking these steps because it's genuinely useful. Until you hit the one major caveat right now, that is. It's currently only listed as being available in the US, and this is being given approval by the FDA. So I can only assume that it's available in the US only because it needs to be assessed by all the different medical governing bodies around the world. Regardless, I'm so excited to see movement on this. It's been a long time since consumer technology has crossed paths so closely with medicine. In any case, the Apple Watch will retail in Australia for about $600 for the non-cellular version and $750 for the cellular version. And of course, you can still pick up the Series 3 version for $400, which is still a solid choice. And then of course we move on to iPhones. This year, as we all probably predicted, is another iterative S year. So with all iterative S devices, we're getting updated processors, a slightly improved camera, and maybe slightly better battery life in a tried and true design. So it has an A12 Bionic chip, which you and I both know is going to fly and be complete overkill for anything mobile related. But ultimately it just means the experience is going to be buttery smooth, especially with iOS 12 speed optimizations. The camera hardware has basically stayed the same with an f1.8 aperture wide-angle lens and an f2.4 telephoto lens. What has slightly changed in the hardware department is a slightly bigger sensor for bigger pixels to catch more light. But the biggest change really in photos is in image processing thanks to the new CPU. It adopts a similar process to Google and their HDR+ feature. So we might actually start seeing dynamic range that rivals the Pixel. So I'm really excited about that. And it also has a revamped portrait mode feature similar to what we see with the most recent Galaxy phones and previous cameras like the Litro camera with an adjustable level of bokeh. I'm not going to say that you can change the f-stop of these photos because scientifically it doesn't actually make sense. The photos that you take will always have the same f-stop with what the lens has. No software is going to change that. But in any case, it promises to be a pretty decent feature and look forward to seeing the photos that it ends up making. And then of course, hardware. The screen is still a beautiful Super Retina OLED display, and there's now dual SIM functionality seen in the guise of a physical SIM and an eSIM card that's already soldered in. If you're Chinese and you live in China, you get 2 physical SIM card slots, But then the Chinese always get special treatment because, you know, that's where all the phones are made, and well, you don't want to bite the hand off that's feeding you. But also, to have 2 SIM cards is a much more common feature over there. I'm surprised it's taken this long to spread because the concept has been around for ages. It is nice to have separate SIM cards and numbers for home and work and not need to carry 2 devices around. That's why Huawei and all those other Chinese phones already have dual SIM card slots built in. And then of course the largest size. Rest in peace Plus Monica, because we're taking it old school Android style and calling the new size the Max. And it's certainly Max in all respects. Maximum screen with a huge 6.5-inch OLED display, maximum battery because battery life was so much more solid on the Plus models, maximum size because it still sits in the same footprint as the old Plus models, but most significantly, maximum price. Here in Australia, we're looking at the very first $2,000 phone, the 256GB Max model. And don't even talk about the 512GB model because that's just going to upset me and a lot of other people. I didn't think it would be this quick, and I already thought the $1,800 price tag of last year's iPhone X model was crazy, but we're now in clinically insane territory right now. So it's going to be a massive deterrent for many consumers, me included to some extent. Even though I do imagine Apple fans are already going to fork out the money for them. I mean, Apple is a $1 trillion company for a reason. Sure, they're going to be excellent devices, but the lines that we're crossing in price makes me incredibly uncomfortable, and it's going to be hard to recommend these phones to regular people. I think people who are going to buy this phone already know they're going to, but people who are sitting on the fence really are going to have to be able to try hard to justify pulling the trigger. And from that, I'm really not sure that many people will. But a phone that is a little more palatable is the iPhone XR. This model is effectively the iPhone 5C of 2018. It's a well-featured 2018 iPhone X built with cheaper components whilst retaining the components that matter. We're talking about the same A12 Bionic CPU, a full notch screen design that sacrifices OLED for LCD, but if we're going on previous iPhone LCD quality, it's going to be pretty good. It still has Face ID, it also has the same f1.8 aperture lens, and more than likely it's going to have solid battery life since it's sitting in a body that's bigger than the standard XS, but just smaller than the Max. It also has an abundance of colors, and honestly sits at a price that makes a little bit more sense, but not by much. Starting at $1,230, this is still one expensive phone, but hey, at least it doesn't cost $2,000, right? The other interesting feature I noticed is with the camera system. This phone is a single lens shooter, but it still retains the ability to shoot portrait mode. So effectively the XR doesn't need a telephoto lens for depth information and just use the wide angle lens for all the data it needs. And this is interesting because it means Apple is likely adopting pretty similar technology to Google with their Pixel phones with portrait mode and depth detection. If so, then you wonder what the future holds for secondary lenses and whether or not iPhones will stick with telephoto lenses for the purposes of practicality. I mean, there are some cases where having a true telephoto lens is useful, and the Huawei P20 Pro is evidence of this. In any case, there's been a few interesting reveals today following the keynote, but what are you most interested or excited for? My personal pick of the bunch is the new Apple Watch. I think there's a few really nice features and it's a really nice iterative update. In any case, thanks for sticking through this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, give us a like, and if you haven't already, do consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay Canadian for me. Cheers.